Madam President, there was a question raised this morning by the Republican leader about where we stand in the closing 2 weeks before the holiday recess. We have a lot of important issues left. One of the most important is the payroll tax cut. Here's what it means. If you have a job in Illinois, an average job in Illinois, that pays about $50,000 a year, currently you have a break on your payroll taxes that are collected, about 2%. So what it means for those families is that they are able to have an additional $125 to $150 a month to spend. For some members of the United States Senate and the House of Representatives, $125 a month might not make much of a difference. But for a lot of families struggling from paycheck to paycheck, $125 can make a big difference. When gasoline prices go through the roof, you can fill that gas tank on your car or your pickup truck and make it to work. You might have a little extra money left for a utility bill when the natural gas prices and oil prices go up during the course of a cold winter. You might be able to afford some Christmas gifts for your kids, maybe even some clothes for them to go to school, a warm jacket for cold weather. $125 is important. If we don't act and act before we leave at Christmas, as of January 1st, that payroll tax will go up 2% on working Americans, and they will have less money to spend. As they spend less money, our economy struggles. When they buy things, goods and services, it creates more economic activity in businesses small and large and creates profitability and jobs, job opportunities we desperately need with our high unemployment. Now, we've taken a position with Senator Bob Casey's amendment here when it comes to the payroll tax cut that it is not unreasonable to ask that the wealthiest people in America, the top 1% in America, pay a little bit more in taxes so that we don't add to our deficit with this payroll tax cut. There were times in the past, as the President noted yesterday, when the Republicans actually argued you never have to pay for a a tax cut or a payroll tax cut. Now they've taken a different position. It has to be paid for. Well, we do pay for it. We pay for it with the surtax on millionaires. Unfortunately, some Republicans oppose that. Senator Kyl said yesterday on the floor in a statement relative to an exchange we had that it's hard to say that the rich are not paying taxes. Madam President, I'm not arguing that point. They are paying taxes, but frankly, under our system of government with a progressive tax system, those who are well off, members of Congress and the United States Senate, and those with high salaries should pay more than those who are struggling from paycheck to paycheck. The people we are talking about, the top 1% wage earners in America, have an average annual income in 2013 of $1.4 million a year. $1.4 million a year. By my calculation, that is a paycheck of $28,000 a week. To say that those people can't afford to pay a little more in taxes is hard for most families to understand. It's hard for me to understand. The Bush tax cuts, incidentally, which the Republicans support, have been very generous to these people. Those in the top 1% making more than $1.4 million a year are going to see a tax cut in the year 2013 of $68,000. A tax cut at a time when we have federal deficits and needs in our country to get beyond this recession. These people in the top 1% control almost 25% of the income in America. 1% of the population, more than 25% of the income. That's up from 12% just 25 years ago. They control 40% of all the wealth in the United States. They are comfortable. In 1986, they only controlled 33%. In fact, we can see in the last 25 years, the wealthy in America have become even more comfortable. And to ask them to make even a small sacrifice for the good of this nation is not unreasonable. Senator McConnell came to the floor and suggested that what we're dealing with on the floor here is political showmanship. Well, last week we went beyond showmanship and we actually called a vote. We had a proposal, Senator Casey's proposal, to reinstitute this payroll tax cut, pay for it, as I mentioned, with a surtax on the wealthiest people in America. At the end of the day, out of 53 Democratic senators, 50 voted yes, and 1 Republican senator joined us. We had 51 votes in favor. It took 60 votes to pass, so it didn't prevail. Then Senator McConnell had his chance. He brought to the floor the Republican alternative, They would extend the payroll tax cut by eliminating jobs, over 200,000 jobs in the federal government, at a time when, frankly, we need more workers in veterans' hospitals, and we need more people working on medical research at the National Institute of Health, and we need more involved in law enforcement to keep America safe. But Senator McConnell said the way to pay for any tax cut for working families is to eliminate federal jobs. They called it for a vote, Madam President. As you and I both know, there are 47 Republican senators on the floor. So how did the vote turn out when the Republicans called their proposal to extend the payroll tax cut? If I'm not mistaken, only 20 Republican senators voted for that proposal. In fact, Senator McConnell was the only member of the Senate Republican leadership who voted for the proposal. So you have to ask, when it comes to the competition of ideas, who won that exchange? The answer is no one won, because at the end of the day, we did not extend the payroll tax cut. Back home in Chicago this last week, I had a press conference with a lady, single mom, 3 kids, struggling with 3 jobs with an annual income, combined income of less than $25,000 a year. I can't imagine how she gets by. But she said that $50 more a month, and that's what the payroll tax cut means to her, would be significant. $50. That's how close so many people live to the edge. It's time for us, in the closing days of the session before Christmas, to reach a bipartisan agreement, to make sure the payroll tax cut's extended, to make sure that the unemployment benefits that are needed so desperately by so many people out of work are there to help them and their families. The only way we can achieve that is in a bipartisan agreement. We now know that the notion of just cutting away at federal jobs has been rejected soundly, even by the Republican side of the aisle. Let us come to a reasonable conclusion of how to pay for this in a manner that doesn't add to unemployment, but adds more jobs to the American economy, something which most Americans agree should be our highest priority.